This event is offered by the Lloyd D. Levinson Institute of Gaming, Hospitality, and Tourism, part of the School of Business at Stockton University, in partnership with the New Jersey Casino Control Commission and with the involvement of the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the celebration of 45 years of legalized casino gaming in New Jersey. This program is being presented by the Lloyd D. Levinson Institute of Gaming, Hospitality, and Tourism, also known as LIGHT, in conjunction with the New Jersey Casino Control Commission and the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement. My name is Jane Buchanevich, and I'm the faculty director of LIGHT, but I also enjoyed a 22-year career in the casino industry, 12 of those years as vice president at Tropicana. So we have a wonderful program for you today, and I wanted to, we have Dr. Harvey Kesselman, the president of Stockton University, on the agenda, but unfortunately an urgent matter came up and he had to attend to that. So he wanted me to express, though, his congratulations to everyone. So it's my pleasure to introduce the provost of Stockton University, Dr. Limor Kahanov, and she's going to give a welcome to everyone. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's my great honor to welcome all of you to the celebration marking the 45 years since the Casino Control Act was signed into law. As neighbors in Atlantic City, Stockton University has had the opportunity to grow alongside the casino industry and witness the many changes that have taken place. Now, if President Kesselman was able to be here today, you know that he would remind us all that the first campus was at the Mayflower Hotel on Tennessee Avenue at the Boardwalk. I don't have his stories to share, but this just happened to be across the street from where the Casino Control Commission established its presence in Atlantic City. Over the past 4 decades, thousands of our students and alumni have been employed by casino properties, and today, several former and current employees of the industry teach in our hospitality, tourism, and event management program. And we're very lucky to have them educating the future employees. The relationship between Stockton and the industry is strong, and at one point in time, more than half of the casino CEOs were Stockton graduates. Now, you know, this is Dr. Kesselman asked me to give a little bit of a history reminder. Historically, in 1978, Governor Byrne cut the ribbon at resorts, indicating that the industry would rekindle the memories of so many who remembered the Atlantic City as the world's most famous playground. The commission was established as an independent agency to withstand political influence and act impartially and with objectivity. While it's undergone some changes, the commission has become a standard for other states to emulate. Casinos were envisioned for Atlantic City with the promise of creating opportunity, revitalizing a struggling resort, create good-paying jobs, and raise funds to support programs serving some of the most vulnerable. For the past 45 years, the Casino Control Commission and Division of Gaming Enforcement has maintained its independence, integrity, and duty to the residents of New Jersey. I share with many in congratulating the agency and its staff on continuing their stewardship into the future. I would like to bring up and announce Jim Plausis, Chairman of the Casino Control Commission, who's going to speak next.
Thank you, Limor. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. We are really impressed with the numbers that came in person, but we also have probably 100 people that are watching via the streaming. So again, thanks for everybody in attendance as well as at home watching. Let me begin by thanking Stockton and the Lloyd Levinson Institute of Gaming and Hospitality. They have worked on this nonstop, promoting it as well as fine-tuning it. And I got to thank Jane and Sarah and all their staff, the video people. They've done a terrific job throughout this. Also, my staff, David Scanlon, my chief of staff, who did a lot of work here and got the governor to do a nice video for us shortly. You'll see that. So my other staff that have worked on it as well, if they could just stand up for a second and be recognized, the Casino Control Commission staff. Yeah, thank you. With that being said, we also have some former commissioners here that I'd like to introduce. Well, first, let me introduce my two commissioners that are sit with me as we speak. Is my Vice Chair, Alicia Cooper, and Commissioner Molyneux. They're right here. And we're honored to have former Commissioner Mike Fedorko and Ralph Ferolio here as well. And we appreciate your service to the commission, and we've been blessed to have some really talented commissioners over the years. And as the provost said, this is the 45th anniversary of the Casino Control Act. And the Casino Control Act created the first of its kind, a two-agency system. The Division of Gaming Enforcement that provides strong law enforcement supervision over all persons, locations, practices, and associations related to the operations of the casinos and all related industries. And it also created the Casino Control Commission, which provides independent decision-making on licensing and appeals in a quasi-judicial setting. Because of New Jersey's thorough and strict requirement to ensure integrity, receiving a New Jersey casino key license was viewed as the gold standard in the casino industry. After New Jersey showed it could ensure the good character, honesty, and integrity of the industry, public confidence and trust and credibility and integrity grew in the casino industry. So as we stand here today, 45 years later, there's no doubt about it, we literally have been the gold standard, not only for this country, but for the world. As that resulted in, as we speak, 46 other states have gaming. As we speak, there's over 485 commercial casinos in the United States, and they employ close to 1 million people. So really, that industry started because of the good practices that Atlantic City had. With that being said, there is one person I want to introduce to give some remarks. Senator Bill Gormley. He served the state legislature for 30 years, 25 of those years in the state Senate. He served as chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Throughout his legislative and legal career, he's always been an important and leader in continuing economic revitalization of the region and the casino industry. That is especially true with crucial development projects in Atlantic City and the region, and I'm just going to mention a few. The airport, the convention center, the transportation center, the outlets, as well as the Brigantine Connector Tunnel. So he's had a large impact on the industry over the 45 years. In addition to that, he's been a true leader in charitable causes, and I want to mention a few of them: the Boys Club, the Girls Club of Atlantic City, Friends of the Atlantic City Music, Sisters of Charity, as well as St. Augustine's Prep, the Jewish Community Center of Margate, as well as the William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy here right at Stockton. So, Senator Gormley, could you come up, give some remarks, please?
I like that they put a sheriff in charge. I'm partial to that. Okay, I want to start off by talking about Joe Namath. You had the AFL trying to get legitimacy. They said it would never happen. And then there was that Super Bowl, and he did the unbelievable. He made the AFL credible. Well, we have our Joe Namath here today, and that's Steve Persky. Because they're never going to get gaming in Atlantic City. It's never going to happen. It's impossible. Let me cut through all the history that's been written and the people that patted them on the backs, themselves on the back. We got a lot of those around here. If it wasn't for his relationship with Brendan Byrne, we wouldn't be sitting here today, there wouldn't be 30,000 jobs, and we wouldn't be talking about the future. So that is my total overview of what happened in the past. But what I want to do is apply this to the future, because apparently Senator Palestina was paying attention to what Steve Persky did. And I'll tell you why. We have a senator locally, because this is about what are we going to do today and today forward, who's forged the relationship with our current governor, in which he is the only Republican who voted for an additional ban on assault weapons or whatever. And he also voted for the governor's budget. So that relationship, we can have all the panels in the world, but it's about that relationship with the governor that makes things happen. But there's certain awards I want to give today. For the most heroic, Michael Epps. He has 3 strokes. Wait a second. He had 3 strokes. 2 weeks later, he's greeting the governor after, was it 3 strokes? Only 2. I'm sorry. I exaggerated and lied. Okay, I'm sorry, Michael. You could have rolled with me and said 3, okay? Just, don't make an old guy feel bad, all right? So, and also, I have an announcement to make. Harvey and I, we're very excited. We have both decided to buy condominiums together at the site of the new Motor Speedway at Bader Field. And we just can't wait for it to open. Ooh, that's special, isn't it? But I want to talk about a current issue and why you have a team together in Atlantic City that is as good as you're going to get to handle it, okay? We've just had a significant upgrade in county prosecutor. Prosecutor Williams, that was the former prosecutor. Prosecutor Reynolds is doing a great job, and he's working with the chief of police. And as we all know, Mayor Small very much wanted to make sure that we had this chief of police. They make a great duo. And let's face it, from the citizens, from the casinos, and everybody, public safety, public safety, public safety. It's a very hard task in every urban area. But with that combination that you have in terms of a prosecutor and a chief of police and the support of the mayor, if you're going to accomplish significant changes in public safety, that's the team that can do it. And we're very fortunate that they're together. I want to compliment the industry. COVID, hard economic times, they've come through it. They've worked with the division and the commission. They're improving their properties every day with a little forceful nudging from time to time, but that's all good. But what's happened is they have done a great job, and they've really made a difference in terms of the quality of their facilities, and they've really, listen, these are big investments by these people, and they've done an absolutely spectacular job. Somebody else, this is disgusting, all these people, I gotta say, are doing a good job. Kaleem Shabazz. I have to compliment Kaleem, because if there is a crisis in Atlantic City, he's there. Every hard task, Kaleem happens to show up, and he does a great job. He's a great ambassador for the city. So what do I think? I think the major issue we have to, let me talk about, there's a lot of headlines about the supermarket. Will there ever be well, let me explain something. You cannot have a supermarket unless it is a secure supermarket. And I submit to you that between the mayor, Prosecutor Reynolds, and everybody, and your chief of police, Sarkos, you have a team that's going to address that. So we can have all the ideas in the world, but then again, it gets back to public safety. But all the people I mentioned are all on the same team. They all want to make a difference. And remember, this governor, for all these ideas, he is behind every solid idea, anything you come up with. His accessibility is incredible. And he's been very helpful to something that Lynn Kesselman and I had dreamed about for a number of years, and we're doing a United States Indoor Rowing Championship at the Convention Center, and we couldn't have done it without his support. And we had his blessing from the very beginning to creating the Boys and Girls Club partnership with Apple. So it starts with the governor, and I think this team here has done a great job to enhance that, and we've got a chance. They always write Atlantic City off. That's not smart, because remember, how boring would New Jersey be without Atlantic City? They need us, don't they? So, but you've got a great team on the ground, as good as you're going to get, and the future's bright, no matter what the naysayers might say. Thank you very much.
As Chairman Plousas mentioned just a few minutes ago, we have 2 really wonderful videos to show. The first one is a message from Governor Murphy, and the second one is a compilation of reflections from key industry leaders.
Hey everyone, Governor Phil Murphy here. The Casino Control Act is one of the seminal pieces of legislation, not just in the history of Atlantic City, but in the history of our state. 6 months from now, we'll celebrate the 45th anniversary of the opening of Resorts Casino, the first legal gaming hall in Atlantic City. But as we all know, that day and the more than 16,000 days which have followed would not have been possible without the framework built by the Casino Control Commission. A framework, by the way, which the Casino Control Commission continues to ensure is strong. Again, my congratulations to all, and most importantly, keep up your great and essential work. Thank you, folks.
We have been the gold standard. 45 years ago, it was a very novel experiment that went very well, so well that everybody emulated us around the country, and now we've been the example for clean and safe gaming for 45 years, and we set the standard.
It's important to remember that here in 2022 that what we're talking about in 1977 was a lifetime ago in every respect. Gambling in America at that time was not welcomed either on what we used to call Main Street or Wall Street, meaning that it didn't enjoy popular support, and it certainly didn't enjoy standard, legitimate funding sources. So when we were dealing with writing a statute for New Jersey, we had to recognize those two imperatives, and we had to draft a series of provisions that would give confidence in the integrity of the gaming operations and in the integrity of the regulatory operations.
Governor Byrne at the time told organized crime to keep their hands out of New Jersey, and he was adamant about that. And since some of the regulatory environments and some of the rules kept folks that you wouldn't want in your industry, kept them out because of the investigations that took place before someone could get licensed. It was a tough process.
From the beginning, the Atlantic City gaming industry has benefited from a strong and effective regulatory environment. The New Jersey Casino Control Commission and the DGE work cooperatively to ensure bad actors are kept out of the gaming industry.
They have never lost sight of the good character, honesty, and integrity requirements, and for that reason, the number of scandals and the like in New Jersey have been very few.
In all of these years, New Jersey has set a high standard and maintained that standard for the integrity of the regulatory process, for the integrity of the gaming operations. And we should all be very proud of that.
What they did 45 years ago and incorporated over the first 10 or 15 years of regulating this industry led to the opportunities for other state jurisdictions in the United States to mirror. Without that effort, what we see today in the United States with the expansion of legalized gaming would not be in place.
I think New Jersey offers the gold standard when it comes to regulatory environment, and much like Frank Sinatra, who's a New Jersey native, not a New York native, said, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. The same applies for companies that want to come and be vetted in the highest regulatory, but the most fair regulatory environment in the world, and then take that across the country. It makes it a lot easier from that point forward.
Our goals when we did this in the 1970s, when we passed the referendum in 76, when we wrote the statute in 77, when we formed the commission in 78, the goal was the economic and social reinvigoration and redevelopment of Atlantic City in particular, and New Jersey's tourism and vacation industry in general, with the economic and the social effects that would have. And that has succeeded beyond what we anticipated in those years.
Jobs were not only for Atlantic City, they did well in the local restaurants, the Absecon area, and also across the state of New Jersey.
From the very beginning, I mean, I was a kid observing folks line up on the boardwalk to go into the one casino we had here when resorts first opened, and it was a spectacle. And then having friends and family all go through the process of getting their license and become dealers. And a lot of the folks who lived in Atlantic County and even the surrounding counties worked in Atlantic City. So it was a key employer, and employment drives the economy.
The indirect benefits and the direct benefits of the Casino Control Act have created really a nice community that has not only been built by the, say, 23,000 employees of a casino that are working right now, but then you have the employees of gaming manufacturers, you have the employees of iGaming platform providers and sports wagering providers. You have the employees of the vendors that give things to that provide services to casinos and the restaurants, and the cleaning services and the construction companies.
For almost 50 years, there has been a steady stream of good paying jobs for families in the Atlantic City region, which would not have existed but not for gaming coming to Atlantic City.
The Atlantic City gaming industry has created tens of thousands of jobs for the region, over $10 billion in capital improvements over the last 20 years, and has invested $10 billion in transportation, prescription drugs, and other services for New Jersey seniors and the disabled.
The casinos, the 45 years, has been hugely beneficial to New Jersey. With the current seniors that we had, some of their needs weren't being met through traditional funding. So this absolutely helped bridge that gap.
Well, there's no doubt about it that we have been the economic engine for the whole region. We've created tens of thousands of jobs in the casinos as well as support services for the casinos as well. So it's really been a driving force on bringing back the economy not only in Atlantic City but in the region.
You're going to ask me in a minute, I suspect, what does the future look like? And the answer is, I'm not that smart. The answer is, if you had asked me in 1977 where we would be in 2022, I wouldn't have come close to the answer. It is the market that governs this. The market will grow and the market will change. There may be new games, there may be new kinds of facilities, there may be new magic with respect to technology. The opportunities are very plentiful and unpredictable.
A lot of that depends on what the technology trend is, but I don't at all know where that technology is going to go.
With Sportsbook coming into town, that has really revitalized a lot of the properties, expanded the properties for Sportsbook. Esports is on the horizon. I think good things are going to come out of that, and all of them are job creators, so I think it's a win-win for the industry as well as the community.
Esports can have a major impact on the entire region as a whole. You're creating the perfect storm between event space, natural surroundings, and a market that is primed for this type of thing.
Despite growing competition, Atlantic City remains one of the more popular tourist destinations on the East Coast and one of the largest economic engines for the state of New Jersey.
I'm very optimistic about New Jersey's position in the future. What new forms of gambling ever come? I don't know, but I suspect that there will be changes possibly in some federal laws that allow for things to be done on an interstate basis that aren't done today. It's very it's very state-centric right now.
I certainly do see more online, but I see the online bringing more engagement of younger customers. I think gaming is going to look a little different. Let's include internet gaming. That's part of, talk about going forward. If we ignore that, we're ignoring where there's growth.
Well, I think it's very exciting for the casino industry over the next several decades, having an event-based focus and experience-based focus in addition to the amazing gaming and food offerings that already exist. I think could really propel the city forward. Where else can you have that many casinos operating in such a small territory with beautiful beaches, the ability to draw from major cities close by on the East Coast, and the ability to draw, to create major attractions and major events in Atlantic City, I think makes us a very unique destination. So I expect that to continue and to be enhanced and for people to enjoy the beautiful amenities that we have for years to come.
The industry and the state and the customers can partner for the future of the city. We certainly have a 45-year history of that. I don't see why it would be any different for the next 45, 50 years.
We should be so proud of what we did when gaming became legal here in Atlantic City. I only see lots of positives for the years to come. There's no place like Atlantic City.
Over the years, it went through some rough times, but I think that the gaming industry has brought Atlantic City back as a true destination. There's no doubt about it that we have been the economic engine for the whole region. We've created tens of thousands of jobs in the casinos as well as support services for the casinos. So it's really been a driving force on bringing back the economy not only in Atlantic City but in the region. I think it's a robust future.
Okay, so we're very fortunate to have many of the leaders that you heard from in the video in person with us here today. And to get the conversation going, I'd like to ask that each panelist will introduce yourself to the audience and just tell a very brief comment about your role in the 45 years of gaming.
I guess I'm first.
Yes, oh, sorry, Michael. Yes, please.
Sure. I am Michael Epps. I'm currently an assistant solicitor with the City of Atlantic City. I was a gaming regulator for 10 years. I was a commissioner. And I'm born and raised in Atlantic City. I had the distinction of being the only individual born and raised in Atlantic City to sit on the Casino Control Commission. It was a tremendous opportunity. I used to say this all the time. It was a tremendous opportunity for me to have a bit of a role in the engine that drives the state of New Jersey, because so goes Atlantic City, so goes the state, and so goes the region. So I was great to be involved in that and have a little bit of a say in what happens in that industry. So it was a great opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, hi, my name is Mark Giantonio. I'm the president of Resorts Casino Hotel, also the president of the Casino Association in New Jersey. Like Michael, I am born and raised in Atlantic City. I'm very proud, and very proud to say that. I went to St. Michael's here and Atlantic City High School. And all I can say is, prior to gaming, 1978, I just remember having the most wonderful upbringing here in Atlantic City. When you think about Frank Sinatra was playing here, and we had Steel Pier and Boardwalk Hall, the Ice Capades, and all those things. So my memory of Atlantic City as a child was just unbelievable. But it wasn't until 1978 when gaming was passed, where you saw everything amp up. Sinatra was playing at resorts, and the Sands, and Golden Nugget, and the Stars, and the restaurants, and so forth. The one thing I would like to say is, and I think many have spoken about it. I totally believe that the best years for Atlantic City is ahead of us, for some of the reasons that Senator Gormley spoke of, but also, when you look back at Las Vegas, or in Nevada, when it was first legalized, 1931, for a period of about 58 years, there was organized crime. There was never once a threat of organized crime here. So. We really focused on the things that really were the catalyst for us to grow.
Thank you, Mark. Lynn?
Hi, I'm Lynn Kaufman. I'm co-chair of the Gaming Practice Group at Cooper Levinson. Can't really tell you about 1978 because I wasn't born yet. Okay, that's a total lie. It's a complete lie, but I wanted to say that. I did have my first date with my husband the weekend that Resorts opened. That doesn't make me a local then, but kind of close. I was an in-house counsel for a casino for 10 years before I joined Cooper Levinson, and I've been there for 25 years. So I started in gaming in 1988, and my takeaway is gaming has built a community. It's where I've raised my family. I've made my friends. I sent 2 kids to Atlantic City High School. And myself and those around me have had, a lot of opportunities because of gaming, and I feel very grateful that I'm in that industry and here today.
Thanks, Lynn. Steve?
He was born then.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Fursky. Let me first thank Senator Gormley for his comments, which I appreciate. I'm frankly, after the video, not sure of exactly what to say either now or when the time comes for me to make a presentation. I've been thinking about it for a couple of days. I was in the room where it happened, when it happened. It started for me in 1972, not 1977. And at that time, when I was in the room, I was, not by a little, the youngest person in the room, as I was for the succeeding years. And as I look around the room today, with one exception who's got me beat by 2 weeks, which she never stops reminding me about, I'm pretty sure I'm the oldest person in the room right now. And all of those years have touched in one fashion or another what you saw in the video here, and I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon. I'm very pleased to be wearing 2 little buttons that you can't see from there. This one's from the Casino Control Commission. This one's from Stockton University. And I am very, very proud of my connection over the years with both organizations. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, my name is Dave Rebuck. I'm an Assistant Attorney General and the Director of the Division of Gaming Enforcement. And I first took that position, I was appointed to that position in May of 2011. So I've had the great honor and privilege of leading the division, which serves as the primary agency, law enforcement, and civil regulation of the casino industry. And in that 10-year period of time plus now, we've seen tremendous growth in areas that didn't exist in 1978. I don't even know that the internet even existed in 1978, but if it did, I'm sure Al Gore had something to do about it. But again, we have an agency, a division of almost 350 people with 50 plus state troopers, 11 individuals that are criminal prosecutors, 150 civil investigators, probably 70 technologically skilled individuals who test every IT piece of equipment you could possibly think of. And they are the true leaders in ensuring that this industry stays at the same level of integrity that was created by others in the audience and here back in 1978. And we take that stewardship very seriously and are very humbled that we also have the opportunity to be part of this great success story that started 45 years ago.
Thank you. Thank you to all panelists. So I have a few prepared questions for the panelists, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. So I'd like to start with the first question about the early years that I'm going to ask Steve and Michael to comment on. By the mid-1970s, how important was it to Atlantic City to have a tool of urban redevelopment? So I'll start with Steve and then Michael.
I would ask you sort of metaphorically to close your eyes and reimagine yourself in the early 1970s in Atlantic City. The problem by then had already become nationally known. It started nationally known in 1964 with the Democratic National Convention being held here. And the entire country with nothing better to do because there was really no political contest at the time. So they focused on Atlantic City. And what they found in Atlantic City in 1964 was a decaying, decrepit commercial environment. The hotels were very substandard, and the media made had no hesitation in pointing that out. And for the following years then, the economy of Atlantic City deteriorated even further. The resort and convention industry had taken advantage of the fact that there was this new device that had been developed. It's called an airplane. And by the 1960s and into the 1970s, if you wanted to, wherever you were in the United States, you could get on a plane and you could go to Florida, you could go to New York, you could go to Las Vegas, you could go to any place, Chicago, any place where they had good convention facilities and good resort facilities, and you didn't have to get in your car and drive to Atlantic City. So Atlantic City was, by the time we got this started in the 1970s, in very significant economic and social distress. There was also the phenomenon, not limited to Atlantic City or to New Jersey, of urban flight. And in fact, you had people leaving the cities and going to the suburbs. That was here, that was elsewhere. And the result of it was that in every meaningful respect, Atlantic City was in dire trouble. The idea of casino gaming was initially looked at with scorn and laughter. And basically there were three reasons in Atlantic City, and there were basically three reasons for that. First, you had an industry that in the United States was at that time limited to Nevada, and was considered around the rest of the country as having been organized, operated, and funded by people that you didn't want to invite to your house for dinner, without mentioning any names. So you had a serious political and perspective problem with respect to the industry. The industry was considered a place for the mob. In Atlantic City, in the early 70s, you had the first two of what became a series of 4 consecutive mayors of Atlantic City on their way to jail. In the state of New Jersey, you had the United States Attorney for the state of New Jersey, who was the son of a Supreme Court Justice of the United States, publicly state that several members of the New Jersey legislature, including, by the way, by name, the senator from Atlantic County, were, and I quote his remark at the time, entirely too close to organized crime, end quote. So the idea of putting casinos in Atlantic City meant that you would take a corrupt industry and put it into a corrupt city that was located in a corrupt state. Other than that, you had no problem.
That's beautiful.
So the central focus of what we were trying to do was to make sure that we could convince both Wall Street and Main Street of the legitimacy of this effort. Wall Street in the sense that it would be an industry that could be properly funded in a strategic and well-known, comfortable fashion. And Main Street in the sense that it would be politically acceptable. And we took 2 shots at it. The first one in 1974 failed. We could not get the votes in 1974 to limit it to Atlantic City. We could not get the votes in the legislature. And the result of it was that we had to compromise and agree to a provision. The governor was not in favor of it at all and made that clear, that if the referendum to amend the Constitution passed in 1974, casinos could be located in any municipality in which the people of that county had voted yes. The governor promised to veto any such legislation, so we were sort of dead in the water before it started, and the problem in the 1974 referendum was that we were asking the people of New Jersey to talk about casinos. They didn't want to hear about it. They weren't going to be impressed with the notion of bringing that kind of an industry into this kind of city, into this kind of state, and the result was an overwhelming negative vote. So we went back and tried again in 1976, and instead, in this instance, we decided to focus people's attention not on casinos, but on Atlantic City. And the result of it was a second effort through the legislature. We did get the votes this time to limit it to Atlantic City. We also spent the summer putting together the draft of what became the Casino Control Act with an emphasis, a heavy emphasis, on integrity, on police practices, on making sure that every person who was in any way associated with the industry, whether it was the owner of a casino project or an employee or a supplier, anybody who had anything to do with the industry, would be clean. I'll tell you one story that made the point of that referendum. I traveled around the state that year in 1976 to try to sell the concept, spoke to different groups in different parts of the state. One day I'm in Monmouth County speaking to, I frankly don't remember if it was a Kiwanis Club or an Exchange Club or an Alliance Club, some social organization. There were a couple of hundred people in the room. And I was making the case, and as I looked around the room, I had by that time enough political experience to know how to read people's faces. And as I'm looking around the room, I could see very clearly I was getting absolutely nowhere. I was selling something that no one was buying. And then there was an intervention that once in a while happens in your life where you say, oh, somebody was watching that. I literally stopped in the middle of a sentence. I had been selling Atlantic City. I stopped in the middle of a sentence and I said, how many of you have ever been to Atlantic City? Every hand in the room went up. How many of you have been to Atlantic City in the last 10 years? Maybe 20%. Light bulb. They have no idea, the people of New Jersey have no idea what is going on in Atlantic City. They haven't been there, it hasn't been talked about, they don't know. So I came back down here and met with the people who were running the referendum campaign that summer, and we talked about it. We wound up changing the entire focus of the presentation. We had slides made in those days. That was a meaningful event. We had pictures, we had stories, we had actual people who lived in the city and could go someplace and explain what was going on in their neighborhoods. And the result of it was that we wound up selling Atlantic City, and that's what got us passed in the referendum. And then when we got to the legislature in the early part of 1977, at that point the pie had already been baked, because we had promised the people in the referendum the highest possible regulatory structure and highest possible commitment to integrity. So whatever resistance there might have otherwise been in the legislature in the early 1970s disappeared, because we were able to persuade the legislature that the people demanded the highest possible standards. And the Attorney General's office, who had initially been opposed to the proposal to begin with, helped us, got actively engaged. We created the Division of Gaming Enforcement. We created the regulatory structure that has been all these years in the Casino Control Commission. And over the years, I have been fascinated by the observation that what we did in New Jersey, and it was not our intent that this would happen, what we did in New Jersey started something. And at one point, somebody sent me and asked me to comment on, this is many years later, I was long gone by then, somebody sent me a draft of a proposal that was pending in New Zealand. New Zealand, to initiate gaming operations in that country. And they asked me to look at it and comment on it. And I leafed through the pages, and I found page after page after page, word for word, from the New Jersey Casino Control Act. Now, things have changed since then. The initial regulatory environment that we created between the Commission and the Division has been modified. But over all of the years, there has never been any relaxation of the standards, the regulatory standards, the limitations, the insistence on the powers of the regulatory people to do what needed to be done. And the result of it will be that the people of New Jersey have complete confidence in the integrity of the regulatory system and in the operations of the casinos in New Jersey. They have had that confidence. They have it today. They will continue to have it, because the system is as it is. And in that respect, it hasn't changed at all. And I think everybody that touched it at any point should be very proud of that. I'll conclude with one other, I'll answer any questions when the time comes up, but I'll make one other observation that I have made publicly on many occasions. I have been involved over the years in a rather broad range of activities in the New Jersey political process, governmental process. Three of the divisions of government, executive, legislative, judicial, in various capacities. I have seen and benefited from the work of many individuals, some of whom, by the way, are here today. Some of the people that are sitting in this room are people on whose shoulders I stood. But the staff at the Casino Control Commission, and frankly, also at the Division of Gaming Enforcement, is, in my view, pound for pound, person for person, the most effective, the most committed, the most informed, the most professional of any of the organizations that I worked with throughout my history in New Jersey, and I'm very, very proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Michael, you've grown up in Atlantic City. What was your experience with Atlantic City at that time in the mid-'70s?
So it's funny, I've often said, and I guess, stop me if you heard the story, but I call myself the biggest cheerleader of Atlantic City that you'll find anywhere, or at least one of them, one of the biggest cheerleaders of Atlantic City. And I remember growing up in Atlantic City, and I once read a story that said some very negative things about Atlantic City, and called me naive, and maybe my head was buried in the sand, but I refuse to co-sign on those stories, because as a kid growing up in Atlantic City, you couldn't tell me that I didn't have the most idyllic life, childhood of anyone you've ever seen. I had Christmas. I played Little League football in my neighborhood. I played Little League baseball in my neighborhood. I went to a community school. We had basketball and pottery and craft, and I took theater, and I was in the marching band, and we did all of the things that you would ever see on television that a kid would be proud of their little hometown that they did. I did it all. All of those things were here and for us to do, and it was the best it could possibly be. Now, granted, I was a kid, so it didn't take much to impress me. So maybe my town was falling apart around me as I grew up. Because I didn't have to pay attention to those things. But for me, it was the best. It was as good as it could be, and I didn't have any reason to want or desire to be anywhere else. I mean, my parents took me to Broadway to see plays, and I traveled. I went to DC. I have relatives in DC, and I saw all those other places, and I still wanted to come back to the boardwalk and the beach. And certainly in the summertime, there was nowhere else that you would ever want to be than on the beach in Atlantic City. And as a matter of fact, all our friends and family came to our house. We didn't have room. We had to make room for them because Atlantic City was and still is the place to be. So all of the negative things that were painted about Atlantic City, I was naive to, or maybe too young to truthfully know the story about some of the things that were happening. But I did pay attention. I was a younger child of older parents, and I paid attention to the conversations that my parents were having. And I do remember the Vote Yes buttons and the campaigns, and how we really got galvanized a community. Everybody in Atlantic City kind of got together behind this cause, because our community realized that that was our last best chance. And we bought into that concept, and thankfully we made it happen, or they made it happen. I wasn't able to vote at that time, but I remember, and slowly but surely, the old Haddon Hall became resorts, and then the Howard Johnsons became Caesars, and the Marlboro Blenheim became Bally's, and the Ambassador became Tropicana, and all of these things started to sprout up, and all of a sudden our city was changing. And I wrote an article, it was kind of corny, but I said at the time, the queen of resorts is no way is she dead. She changed her outfit maybe, and she put on a new dress like she always does, but you can't keep her down. That girl comes back, and she's still alive and kicking and screaming, and I believe that she will be for quite some time to come. But absolutely, I grew up around it. I grew up into it. I started working in the industry, and then luckily I was at some point tapped to be a regulator in that same industry. So I'm blessed to have my life experience grow up with Atlantic City, and I'm so happy to have been here at that time. But I believed in her then, and I still believe in her now. I mean, and I'm not saying that she's perfect. Absolutely, there are some things that didn't happen. There's some things that we wish had happened differently. But for all the naysayers that said it couldn't be done, we proved 45 years later, here we are without very much scandal. So it was, and it could be done, and we did it.
Thank you. And it's so interesting. It's so interesting that you and Mark both shared such happy times and happy memories. So the family life in the city might have been really strong, while perhaps the business end was what was suffering. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, the next question now, getting into the evolution of the industry as the industry grew. What were some pivotal technology developments since the early days, and how did they profoundly change how casinos do business? And I'd like to ask this question of Mark and Lynn. So let's start with Mark and then go to Lynn.
Okay, thank you, Jane. I brought along an old relic, Resorts International $1 token. How many remember these? It's been in my drawer for the longest of times. You know, I think Dave hit it on the head. The evolution of our business was really a function of technology. When you look back in the late 70s, the slot machines that were there, they were electromechanical. Everything was done manually. And then you look at the evolution, and along the way, the evolution, you know, the casinos wanted to be progressive and innovative. The regulators back then had so much technology thrown at them that they had to scrub and understand and ensure that the results were what we expected them to be. And it was a monumental task. There's never enough credit thrown around about that. So you go from electromechanical slot machines to machines with CPUs and random number generators to technology from bill validators to ticket in, ticket out to credits on cards. All of that had to be vetted and through the labs and introduced. And really, why do we do that? We did it for the benefit of the consumer. We wanted to be on the forefront of technology in so many ways. Atlantic City was. Our casino systems, our rating systems, our loyalty programs, they really, a lot of them were born out of Atlantic City. Some individuals in Atlantic City created these things, and ACSC is a casino system we still use today. It's far more impressive than it was back then. But so it really was a remarkable wave of technology that kind of led the way to excitement and the expansion of the success of casinos here in Atlantic City.
Thanks, Mark. And Lynn, you've experienced from the legal side getting some of these technologies approved. Can you share with us your experience?
Sure. Mark touched on a lot of it, but Lloyd and I opened up Borgata. And when I say like we opened up Borgata, I mean like Borgata was supposed to be opening and all the patrons were invited, and you know we were still begging the Division of Gaming Enforcement for the final approvals. But they opened with ticket in, ticket out, no coins, and that was a really bold move. And you know this is why I'm a lawyer and not a casino operator, because I was like, oh, people aren't going to like that. They like those coins and they like to hear the money dropping. But obviously, that's why I'm still doing this. But but there are a lot of technologies like that. And then when we opened, we also had the privilege of opening up what was Revel at the time, that now is Ocean, but with electronic markers. And so there were all of these developments and then these loyalty programs that got more and more complicated because they were hooked up with casinos in other jurisdictions. But one thing that I think has continued to help Atlantic City and makes Atlantic City stand out, you know, in addition as kind of the icing on the cake of their regulatory system, is that we are the only state that has, maybe one other, fully a gaming lab, our own gaming lab, where the Division of Gaming Enforcement looks at every piece of equipment and tests it and approves it or doesn't approve it and modifies it and doesn't rely on anybody from the outside. And they have a New Jersey First program now, where if you bring your technology to New Jersey before anywhere else, they're going to speed you along in the process. And they have just worked with the industry that has enabled all this new technology. And then obviously, you know, we were the first major state to have internet gaming. And you know, Dave will speak about this, but just like I didn't know how to be an internet gaming lawyer, Dave didn't know how to be an internet gaming regulator, but you know, they had to figure it out. And so we continue to keep on top of technology and looking for innovations, and I think get that technology approved faster than in a lot of other jurisdictions. Of course, the people in the audience that Lloyd and I bug all the time because we don't think they sometimes get it done fast enough. Haha, they do, but you know, it might differ that I think it's so wonderful on some days, but it really is. It's something that we are very lucky, and a few other states tried to have gaming labs, and they do not anymore. They use, outside laboratories, and it's just a little less control. So,
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, just like the technology evolved, so did the regulations. And I would like to ask this question of David first, and then if Mark and Lynn have anything to add, that would be great. So as the gaming evolved, how did the relaxation of some of those original regulations improve performance for the casinos and for the state of New Jersey? So we started out with very strict regulations and over time relaxed some of those. David?
You want me to go first? Sure.
Yes.
Happy to do so. So, again, I think you've heard from all the speakers of the great foundation that was established in the 70s and the excellent work to develop regulations to set a baseline that the state is very proud of and copied by many other states. You fast forward to 2010, 2011, I think there was a general sense, not only by the legislature, but by the governor's office, by the industry, and even by the regulators, that there is a need to reform and modernize that which has been extremely successful over the first 30 years of gaming regulation in the state. And no other state had done that because, as Steve said, that most of them just like to copy what New Jersey did, and think that's the gold standard, or as I call it, the best standard in the world. They weren't going to make any adjustments. And as the legislature acted on this, they've created a new reform that allowed for what I keep referencing as modernization. I don't believe the standards were reduced. I believe the standards that were established and created in the 70s were continued and maintained. And the adjustments that were made were essentially based on the lessons learned by others over that 30-year period. And it goes back to also, if you remember, we only had 2 states that were even regulating gaming in 45 years ago. The lessons learned by those states in copying what we did here in New Jersey and trying maybe to make a little tweaks on their end, we now had 30 years of experience to observe and indicate to us that changes could occur. But your baseline foundation would never be changed. No one in any part of government wanted scandal and the reform to make the industry feel or look like they were not being regulated. And so the changes that were made did not do that. And there were a lot of naysayers when those changes occurred in 2011 from interested parties, whether it be the media, others outside the industry, that this was going to fail. And that the great successes that had been in play in New Jersey since 1978 were now going to be bastardized by this reform. And then you'd have regulatory chaos, fraud, or scandal. We fast forward to today, with another 10 years under our belt. Never happened. I haven't heard from those naysayers, okay? But again, we didn't change that. The core elements that were built in, again, you've heard me say, we are stewards of that in the Division of Gaming Enforcement and the Commission. We'd be horrified if those failures occurred. And our goal is on our watches, Jim's and mine, it should never happen. And if it does, we'll take corrective action immediately. So again, I think the industry understands that. If the industry has ideas or concepts that they seek to present to us that they believe can result in further reform and benefits to them, we have an open door. And I mean, Lynn and Mark will tell you, after that law was passed in 2011, we had a lot of hard work to do. And one of the first things we did is we went to the industry and said, oh, by the way, you're now at the table with us. We have 10 working groups. We're looking at every regulation that's currently on the books, and you will sit at the table with us, and we will have these committees and go over them, open communication, full transparency, and we will decide which ones will be implemented. We did that in a year. The industry thought it was done. They hadn't let them go. Brought them back next year and said, do it again. You think you got some ideas that are going to be better, that enhance what we do here in New Jersey? Sit down with us again. We did it in year 2. We did it in year 3. And Mark will tell you, in year 4, they said, we're done. We don't have anything else for you. We really like what you've done. And they know that. And so we're not, the regulators, both the commission, myself, and even the legislature aren't arrogant to believe that we are perfect and we know everything. We're always open to new ideas, innovation, being adaptive. And people want to sit on the sideline and chirp, fine. But come to the table, we're open, transparent, and if we do things, as everybody knows, it has to be public, and we do. So I'm very proud of that, that's been done, and I hope those in the future look to do it the same way.
Thank you. Lynn, would you like to?
What I would like to add to that is, obviously, he summed it up. I was going to say it wasn't a relaxation. It really was a modernization. One of, I think, the more significant reforms was that everybody realized that when the Casino Control Act was passed, that financing of casinos was, it was a different banking world, right? There were banks, there wasn't private equity. It was just a completely different system of financing, and the way the Casino Control Act and the regulations were drafted didn't contemplate that. And part of the 2011 amendments opened up investment into Atlantic City because it allowed for, entities to not have to, that were already highly regulated, to not have to go through a separate, very intrusive regulatory process that would make people take their couple $100 million and go to another jurisdiction. And New Jersey was very aware of that. Obviously, they didn't want money to come in that was from questionable sources, but I think it helped the casinos to be built and renovated, and all of the investment. And
thank you, Lynn. Mark, did you have anything to add?
Just quickly, I think Dave hit it on the head. You could call that era 2011, as I was part of it with my colleagues and many people in this room, an era of partnership between the casino industry and the regulators. And you may say, how is that possible? A partnership between the regulators and the industry? But that, you said it, Dave. We were at the table with you, and so, if you look at the regulations prior to that point of time, more or less it was a one-size-fits-all. And, clearly back then we were 12 casinos of different sizes and layouts, and not every regulatory rule or policy would fit, actually. So there was an ability to kind of modify and make the operators have some flexibility. Just give you a couple of examples. How we secure our building with security, how we monitor the table games operations. There was some flexibility there that actually allowed for better service and actually better protection. So when you start with the three-legged stool of the 1977 Casino Control Act, keeping bad actors out, knowing your customer, and keeping an eye on making sure underage was not taking place, that never changed. It's all these other things that I think help to modify our business and to attract more people to Atlantic City that the other states just weren't able to do, and weren't able to do it as effectively.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good perspective from the operator's point of view, how it helped. So thank you, Mark. Okay, shifting gears a little bit, the next question I'd like to start with Michael on is, has casino gaming delivered on its promises?
I guess it sounds like a punt, but the way to answer that question is it depends on who you ask. All of that is perspective. There are a tremendous amount of people who have made a life for themselves that they otherwise wouldn't have had an opportunity to do by working in an industry that provides jobs with salaries and things that they never expected in the town that existed here in 1977 or 70 or earlier. And then there are folks who are, let's not be myopic. There are folks who live here who look at the industry and say it hasn't delivered yet. There were things that were expectations. So part of the industry, part of the situation you have, and you hear it all the time, is the city's 48 blocks. And so you have the boardwalk blocks and the area of town where gaming happens and tourism happens and our visitors go. But you also have the part of the town where our folks who are residents here live. And there are some folks who feel like they're still waiting for their delivery and their promise. Neighborhoods come and go and get developed and change, and folks come in, folks leave. So there are some developments, but a lot of times you have to ask yourself, does an industry go into a town and change the entire town, or does it change its footprint and its neighborhood and improve where it lives? So I think that, but again, I punted on the question, but it depends on who you ask that ask that question, because there are some folks who feel like they have not received the full promise of what they were offered, and they're still waiting for it to deliver. But to a greater extent, yes, it has delivered, but there are, as I said, there are still some folks who feel like they're still waiting for their delivery.
Absolutely, thank you. And Steve, if you would comment on that, please, since you were there from the beginning. Has it delivered on its promises?
Well, I need first, in answering that question, because I'm going to be critical in certain respects, but not of the industry. The industry was invited into New Jersey and asked to come to Atlantic City and to do several things, and that was to invest and to run a principled, honest operation that employed people and created job opportunities. The industry did every bit of that every day and still does. The responsibility for meeting the promises, if you will, in terms of redevelopment of Atlantic City and the recreation of the industry and the community and the impact on New Jersey, belonged, in my view, and belongs, in my view, to government. And specifically, that means city government in Atlantic City, county government in Atlantic County, and state government in Trenton. And obviously, I had a good bit to do for a good while with respect to the state and the city. The state and the city, and the county simply entered its disappearance early on and still does. But the state and the city never figured it out cooperatively. And that was true when I served in the legislature until 1982, and it was certainly true thereafter when I got back into the governor's office in 1990 and since then. Well, I can't tell that story. It was the job of state government and city government to cooperate with each other to create a mutual vision for what to do with Atlantic City. And on occasion, at a moment in time, several moments in time, that happened. That's how that's how the Atlantic City Convention Center was created. That's how a number of other things along the way happened with some involved legislators. Part of this was when Senator Grumley was there. But for the most part, the government in Atlantic City and the government in Trenton were in a competition with each other to see who could push the responsibility onto the other. And it never really got where it needed to be. It's better now, but it's better now, frankly, because of an artificial device. The city got into such drastic problems by, 2010, 2012. Things were so bad that the state passed legislation, in effect, giving the state the authority to run the city, which it has done since, whatever, I guess 2016, whatever the year was. And in those years, the city was initially very much opposed to that, as were most local people. But at this point, if you ask the city officials, the mayor and the city councilman, they will tell you that they are grateful and appreciative of what the state has been doing, and in particular, in the last couple of years, the modifications that have been affected by the state in terms of what the governor calls a partnership. At the beginning, it was not anything that looked like a partnership. It is now. The state is still, to be sure, the senior partner, but the state has returned to the city in the last few years significant discretion and management responsibility towards, with a view to the future. I think the legislation runs out, I think, in 3 or 4 years, whatever it is. And the concept is, how do we get to the point where, when that time comes, everybody in Trenton and in Atlantic City is comfortable to have the state end its responsibilities. And as a result, a lot of good is happening now. If that kind of relationship, whether it is state takeover or a partnership or whatever, if that kind of relationship had existed through the 80s and 90s and 2000s, a great deal more could have been done than was done. So, did casino gaming fulfill its responsibilities, meet its promises? Yes. No. Maybe. If you want to really answer that question honestly, you ask yourself this question. Forget this building for the moment, which is a part of the reality, and the presence of this university in this section of the city, which is an important part of that reality. Forget that for the minute. Ask yourself this question. What would Atlantic City look like today, economically, socially, institutionally, if gaming had never passed? Would Atlantic City be better off today without having had casinos? I don't think there's a soul alive who could answer that question, yes. Did Atlantic City reach its maximum potential as a result of what could have happened? No, it did not. Is the future still ahead of us to allow that question eventually to be answered yes? Yes, it is.
Thank you. Very good. David, would you like to comment on that one, or any other panelists have anything to add to what we've just heard?
No, I think it was well stated by the other panelists. I'd just like to highlight that its partnership is well entrenched today, and I expect it to continue in the future with whoever's in a leadership position, because it has been successful in that regard. And the other thing is that Atlantic City is a very resilient town. And the naysayers who are always looking to knock it down should remember it will always arise again. So remain bullish on Atlantic City and recognize that the effort to continue to improve this community is there from a lot of people across state, county, local governments, as well as the industry. And we haven't declared victory, but we're going to keep moving forward and seek to have it better than it is today.
Absolutely right.
Very good, thank you. And that's a great segue for my next question. And this is the last prepared question before we open it up to the audience. But I know, Steve, you were hesitant to comment on the future on the video, but I'd like to ask the panelists, now that we've looked at the past, what do you see as the future of Atlantic City? And I'd really like anybody who would like to share something about that to go ahead. And maybe we'll start with you, Mark. I don't know if you have some feelings on that.
Sir, you know, when I began my freshman year of Stockton, I would imagine if gaming was not in Atlantic City, I probably would have been a flight out of the state of New Jersey. So I am very thankful. I spent my whole career in Atlantic City working at First Resorts as a waiter for 5 years, and then Golden Nugget, Trump Castle, and 23 years at Tropicana, and worked with some of the most magnificent people ever you could meet. And that's where I met my wife, so it's particularly important. You know, I would just say this. I think there's a new generation. We have to applaud the old generation, the people that were in the jobs and did a phenomenal amount of work and body of work to get the industry to where it is. Today, what I see, and it's kind of what Senator Gormley stated, I see the stars aligning. And so my opening comment was, I see Atlantic City, the best years ahead of us. It's going to require work, but it's not brain surgery. I mean, there's the absence of people, consumers on our streets each and every day. And we need to change that, and that's with infrastructure improvements. That's going to be with free capital investment from people that are going to come in and want to invest in a seashore community. Why wouldn't you want to? But we are still in some turbulent times. We're still recovering from the pandemic. We still have, if you look at October numbers, down 7%. We're not heading in the right direction. But the residents of Atlantic City deserve the very best effort from a new generation of people that are working at it. So I would say I'm very optimistic.
Thank you. Anybody else? Lynn?
I'll take a little different tact on this, and what I'm going to say is that I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to in the future is something that we all hear about all the time now, which, because they're buzzwords, which is diversity and inclusion. And I'm saying that like we have to look at our customers and servicing our customers. And when you look at iGaming now and sports wagering, almost half the customers are women. But we're not much worse than a lot of other industries, and in some ways we're better. And I don't think that the casinos are going to solve all the problems of the world as to why women aren't, there aren't more CEOs. But one thing that they can do is just starting from the top. And I mean, we are trying, but it's a long process. And Mark, most of the casinos have programs, but if you just start hiring more diverse people at the top that represent our customers, you're going to get a better product, whether it's in technology and marketing and customer service. It's going to help the casinos make more money, which is going to help capital investment. It's going to help Atlantic County grow, Atlantic City grow. And so I'm just throwing my hat into, I really want to see more diversity at the top. And I know we're working on that, and it's a long process. But I think that is also going to be a key to the continued success in Atlantic City.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. Very important. Very important topic. Anybody else? Let's go
quickly, I've always said that I believe that the industry is going to be around and is going to survive, but one of the things that we have to do as a collective, both the industry and the local leaders, and we all have to put our heads together, because we can't just depend on the industry. We have to find other things, and we have to have folks come here constantly. So we've got to figure out reasons that folks want to come here and how we get them to come here when maybe it's a little bit chilly or the weather's not so nice, but we need them to still want to come to Atlantic City. Atlantic City has been a name that has been on people's tongues since the turn of the century, and it's still a city, and it's still a name that's on people's on the tip of people's tongue. So people still want to come to Atlantic City, and it is an attraction. And one of the things that none of the other towns that have gaming, we've said it all the time, none of them can create is a beach and a boardwalk. And so we always have that, and we always have that attraction, and folks are always going to want to come here So we just have to figure out how we get them to come in our peak shoulder seasons and then stay here and come back in the summer. So we'll keep them coming, and the Mark's numbers will go back up, and we'll be back on again, and things will, I believe, things will continue to progress.
Yeah,
so I'm a
very
believer.
good point. Diversity in our leadership and also in our product offerings to bring
Absolutely.
new people in. Very good. Thank you. Steve?
I basically want to start where Mark finished, because I agree with pretty much everything he said. I think he's absolutely right. My view, as I said a few minutes ago in this respect, is that the future is going to be dependent, as it always will be and as it was, on what the industry does and what government does. The industry will, I am satisfied, continue to be what it needs to be and do what it needs to do. It has consistently, and in my view, it will continue to do so. The question is whether government meets its obligations. And government in this case, as I said, means the state government, the city government, and even someday the county government. Atlantic City's government over the years has had a very up and down existence. There were some years in which things were well done and responsibly. There were some years in which dramatically they were not. The result of it is that as we sit here today, there are some problems that Atlantic City faces that the city government can address and is undertaking to address. There are some problems that no city government, and Atlantic City's in particular, has the facilities or the ability or the strength to handle. Atlantic City, for example, you need a new boardwalk. The city can't afford to pay for that itself, and it's going to need the state government to be actively involved in that exercise. The city has, as many other urban areas do, a homeless problem. Atlantic City's homeless problem, by the way, is abetted by the fact that some of our lovely neighboring communities put people on buses and drive them to Atlantic City and leave them on the street, creating an Atlantic City homeless situation because they don't want it in their backyard. County government has taken a see you later attitude with respect to all of that. So the future in terms of whether we can meet the standards or meet the goals that we envision will depend, as I said, on the continued reliance on the industry to be and do what it needs to be and to do, about which I'm confident, and whether the state and the city and the county can put their programs together to identify and attack and address the necessary components of what it takes to make Atlantic City be the image that we all want it to be.
Thank you, Steve. And David, do you have anything to add? It's hard to be the last one.
Yeah, just from my perspective, and I think it's important to give, in my regard, a shout out to my leaders who oversee me and what they desire, and more importantly, what they expect to be done with the casino industry in regulating it and giving them the opportunities to do the diversification you're talking about, to give them the opportunity to have growth, not put artificial barriers in front of them that they can then come back and say, well, we can't be successful in New Jersey. Because my leadership, whether it's the Attorney General or the Governor, has made it very clear, you will be a leader in this country and even in the world, if need be, to push the envelope to give this industry in New Jersey, which is an extremely competitive industry in the United States, every opportunity to succeed. And we will. And it starts at the top. And it's not just the director or the chair. But we know what we need to do, and the industry knows they have those opportunities to deliver on what we believe are promises that will help the community, and even in the region, the county, be successful in achieving the ultimate goals that Steve referenced that still remain challenges to achieve. But we're not quitting.
Thank you. Okay, so before we thank you to our panelists, we're going to open it up to questions in just a moment, but Chairman Plousis has a few things he would like to say.
One, thank you, panel, was excellent. But I wanted to make two quick introductions. Chairwoman Linda Kasker came in. Linda, thank you for coming. We appreciate it. And a gentleman who was Senator Gormley spoke about, and I think some other people referred to as well, the new prosecutor, William Reynolds, is here. And just let me say a quick few words. You know, some of you in the room know that I have a little background in law enforcement. I was a sheriff. I was the U.S. Marshal for New Jersey. I was chairman of parole board. And the prosecutor's come in hitting the ground running. He's looking at a holistic approach. You heard about homelessness from this panel, reentry from the panel, and the prosecutor is going at addressing all these issues in one swoop. And he's done that with partnerships with this, as we heard, with the chief of police here, as well as the sheriff, as well as the state senator. So I think we're heading in the right direction. We've heard it from numerous people today, but I think, as Senator Gormley said, the stars are aligned, and I think we have the right people in the right places. And him coming today, I think, really sends a message that he cares and he wants to hear what's going on, not only in the community, but in the industry and the regulators as well. So thank you, prosecutor, for being here.
Thank you.
Jane, could I just say that we talked about the really solid regulatory scheme that we have here, but the laws and the regulations are meaningless if the people who are regulating you aren't good regulators and hardworking and dedicated to the industry. And there are a good number of them here in the audience, and I just want to acknowledge them and thank them.
Thank you. Yes, very good. Okay, so we're going to take a few questions. We have 15 minutes to take questions from both our in-person audience and our virtual audience. So Sarah, do we have a mic to, oh yes, okay. Jennifer will be passing around the mic. Let's start with one question from our in-person audience, and then we'll go to our virtual audience.
Hi, everybody. My name is Thomas Truitt, and I'm just here to let everybody know about, just want to know what's going on with the smoking ban, if it's ever going to come to Atlantic City. And we're suffering, you know, we're really hurting. It's nice in here, you can breathe real fresh. It's nice to breathe in here, but when you're working in the casino floor and the people are smoking at you, it hurts you really badly. It hurts your heart, hurts your lungs, your sinuses, everything. And it's hard to think. And we're just hoping that we're going to evolve where there'll be no smoking, because a lot of the players, they want that too as well. They complain about the smoke. And I just want to know if anybody here can answer me if it's going to happen someday. There's only a couple laws that need to be passed, and some reason they're not being passed. So that was mine. Thank you.
Yeah, Gene, I could take it. Thomas, thanks for being here, and I saw your colleagues are here as well. And we appreciate you being here. You know, it's a very, very difficult subject matter. There's no question about it. Other parts of the country, they have been able to eliminate smoking. We are at 25%. We, you know, carefully monitor the smoking. I know that the industry has spent multiples of millions of dollars. I know at resorts and other properties, you know, we're refreshing our air rate at 100% volume. We put in, after COVID, bipolarization and UV technology that helps to eliminate the smoke. But I certainly understand and appreciate your concern. You know, I was interviewed about a month ago, and here would be my take. We have to stabilize this industry, because we have various studies that say if you eliminate smoke, we are going to have a pretty significant, almost immediate downturn. And you know, each and every day I come to work, my colleagues come to work. We're trying to figure out how do we add more jobs to this industry. And right now, after October being down 7%, you know, November and December are very sketchy. You know, there's stagflation out there. Anybody doesn't want to say that there's a recession? I studied economics at Stockton. I can tell you we're in a recession right now. So, you know, the reality of it is I think there is a time for eliminating smoking. It's just not sure it's right now. I think we've got to get out of this. And I think we also have to, as I said, a new generation of individuals have to deal with the issues that are happening in Atlantic City, so we can start to begin to bring in more volumes to Atlantic City. When that happens, I think there's a time for all of that. It's just if you eliminated it right now, there would be thousands of jobs lost. And I don't think anybody wants that. You know, that's the bottom line. So it's a very tough discussion. I appreciate you asking it.
Thank you, Mark. That's a very difficult question. Thank you for answering that. Okay, Sarah, do you have the first question from our virtual audience?
Not quite yet. I guess we're doing real good in answering everybody's questions. But they are perfectly welcome to submit their questions using the Q&A form. Why don't we take a few more from the room?
Okay, so one more question from the in-person audience. Anybody? I thought I saw a hand back there. Okay, there's one. I think there was one over here, though, before. The gentleman right there with the, I think he had his hand up.
Yes, I did have one. First of all, I want to thank the commission, and I want to thank the city. Okay. I want to thank the city for giving me a career, not a job. City of Atlantic City has given me a career. Like the two gentlemen up there, the two Vikings, I graduated from Atlantic City High when it was in this spot, and I'm very proud of that. My coworkers and I, would you stand, please? This is the backbone of the casinos in Atlantic City. As you see, it's a lot of diversity in us. We're actually the coal miners in Atlantic City. We greet and service the millions of guests that come to Atlantic City. And as my friend pointed out, I'd just like to ask on behalf of all of the sick workers, on behalf of the low birth weight children born to mothers that work in the casinos, on behalf of all of our fallen comrades that are gone too soon. No one else in Atlantic City has to be subjected to secondhand smoke in the workplace. And I just want to ask, is there anybody in this room, on this panel, all the influential people in this room, does anybody have the courage, does anybody have the humanity, the decency to get us out of the smoke, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, any other questions online?
Well, I have a question. It was brought up a little loosely in our introductory video. You know, esports is becoming a bigger and bigger influence in just in sports in general, gaming in general, and I know that we've established our Esports Innovation Center. How would the panel like to respond to how they're seeing esports evolve and whether they see it coming into the regulatory area?
Good question for our panel. Anybody want to comment on esports? How it might integrate into the industry?
I can take a shot at it. There's really only 2 states in the United States that today regulate sports wagering that have any interest at all in trying to diversify into the esports arena. It would be the state of Nevada and the state of New Jersey. And it's been very clear to me that the state of New Jersey can be a leader in this area to allow esports to be integrated into both the retail gaming environment as well as the online gaming environment. It's a nascent industry right now because most of the casinos, certainly the tribal casinos, the commercial casinos, are looking at it to try to understand if it's an amenity that they want to make a significant investment in to make an offering to a segment of the population that probably doesn't gamble right now. And we're very encouraged by the leadership we've had from our governor, who has made it very clear. You just saw in Stockton, like the Innovation Center has been supported through an EDA grant. We've had some tournaments here. We've had some online tournaments. And I see it as a challenge to beat Nevada to the punch. And we will try to have every opportunity to have it more available and understood by the casino operators of what maybe can be done in this area. There's actually a bill right now in the legislature that's, I think, is going to be helpful to the nascent industry because the main focus right now throughout the United States in gaming is in the area of sports wagering, traditional sports wagering. Everybody sees it. You see it on TV. You see the ads. And as that continues to grow, it's now in 35 states. Since 2018, when New Jersey won the case, it was in 35 states, and probably half the states have it online. But it's in 35 states right now, and it's going to continue to grow. And as the industry puts its resources into growing this new sports wagering in new states, you're almost seeing what the industry went through with the Casino Control Act with Steve. I mean, as other states were going into this area, the industry needed to hire people and learn how to offer the games. The regulators had to oversee it to make sure it's fair and transparent, consumers were protected. So the main emphasis on sports wagering is probably hindering a little esports because there's so much growth that's still going on in the first 4 years of legalized sports wagering. So I do think we're ahead of the game. We're a little more mature market than others. We've had the experiences in sports wagering that we have overcome the problems. We still see problems, we still see issues. However, we're open to this with esports.
Thank you. Steve?
You know,
Sorry.
there's an old saying, the only thing new in the world is the history you don't know. In 1976, when we were having the hearings on the referendum proposal that eventually passed, and here we are, the commissioner of the National Football League and the commissioner of Major League Baseball, and probably, those are the two I remember, but there were probably a few others, came to Trenton to testify against the proposal to allow casinos in Atlantic City because, as they indicated, that would destroy the integrity of professional sports in America. And then when I was at the Casino Control Commission in 1992, I believe, when we were looking at the possibility, which we didn't have the legal authority to do, to try to figure out how to legalize sports betting in New Jersey, the commissioners again came in to testify that we shouldn't do that. So today is what, Thursday. On Sunday, I guess, was the last time I had the television on to watch a game. And as anybody who has watched the games knows today, part of the ads are for this gaming company, which is the NFL partner for betting. So if you look at those facts, you can see the nature of the evolution over the years. The one thing that hasn't happened, it will happen in my view, it hasn't happened yet. I'll go into a political discussion later, privately maybe, is that the Congress has to get out of the way. The Congress was asked, where are we now, 2022? The Congress was asked, I think 4 or 5 years ago, as recently as that, to deal with legislation that would have essentially granted to any state that wishes to accept it the authority to regulate sports betting in a fashion that would eliminate the legal and administrative difficulties that come from the fact that we are a collection of 50 states. Congress was unwilling at that time to do that. It is my judgment not only that they should have and should, but someday they will. And when they do, that will stimulate in New Jersey and elsewhere, at least in those states that choose to do it, the development and the further development of that element of the industry.
Thank you, Steve. Michael?
I think that the one point I was going to make is part of this debate comes from a tug of war that has been around for a while and is going to continue to evolve between what they call terrestrial or brick and mortar casinos and online casinos. And a lot of those answers that we don't necessarily know the answers to right now are going to come from the customer, who I think are a lot younger than us. So it's going to be what they want. And
eventually get where they need to be for just that reason.
Right. The question is going to be answered by the customer, because the customer is always going to determine the industry. And a lot of those folks are young right now, and they game online and they do things differently than what was offered in the past. And so that's going to determine where we're going to go, because we're always going to have to cater to the customer. And so the young people, I think, are going to set the tone. And when they say that that's what they want changed, that's when we're going to get changed, because we're going to have to keep the customer satisfied. And there's a lot of things, even that we discussed here, that some of the younger folks aren't necessarily interested in as much as they used to be. And so we're going to have to continue to shift on the fly and satisfy that customer. Atlantic City has done that for a long time, and I'm convinced that we'll figure it out also as we go forward. But that's what we have to focus on.
Excellent point.
Jane, just a very quick follow-up from an operator perspective. You know, the industry has embraced esports, and we've done some examples and samples of esport tests and so forth in some casinos with the Director Reebok's assistance. And to date, you know, it goes back to the 80s when slot machine manufacturers, IGT and Bally's, they were so innovative, and that product was stood up very quickly. It's really, I think the onus is going to be on the esport companies to stand up a business that's viable and where it's, you know, you're able to monetize it. It's a great experience. Skill-based gaming is very different than, you know, a regular casino gaming. So I think it will probably come at some point. It's just, it seems to be very slow moving at this point.
Thank you. Well, I think we're about out of time. Is there any virtual questions or?
There were two, but I think I'll focus on this one, and maybe I'll paraphrase it a little bit. We are a university. We are in the business of educating and helping young people, all people, find their path in careers. And the panel has been very generous in sharing their paths to gaming. So one of the questions puts me in mind of asking, what advice would you have for young people seeking a future in this industry?
Well, just very quickly, I spoke to a young graduate of college today. He was just hired at our property to become a marketing operations rep. And I shared with him, you know, a couple of things. You know, you got yourself in the door, you know, be a sponge. And, you know, at the end of the day, this business has offered, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs over the course of 45 years, and created all kinds of family dynamics and family celebrations and weddings. This is such a viable business that I really believe, especially at Stockton, you know, some of our greatest leaders will come out of Stockton, and they will be the future general managers of properties and CEOs of gaming companies if they really do desire, because it's such an intriguing industry. So I would tell young people, just keep plugging along and try to look into gaming.
And if you get into a casino and you don't like the department you're in because maybe like marketing isn't your thing, but well, you know, I think I might be interested in table games or, you know, something else, some, you know, analyst role. Once you are in the door, as Mark said, you're there, and there are opportunities for not only just changing laterally in your position, but there's always leadership development and professional development that will give lots of opportunity. So don't give up if it's not your cup of tea initially.
The other thing, just to that point, is one of the points that was made earlier is not only did the casino industry bring about jobs inside the in-house, but it brought a bunch of ancillary opportunities. So for young folks that are in the area and they have entrepreneurial spirit, I would encourage them to also go out there and take advantage of those opportunities and create your opportunity. Seek some support and create those ancillary industries that the industry is going to have to rely on. So you end up being the source that they go to seek the products that they need to make their organizations go. Yeah. So you become indispensable parts of what makes them happen.
Yeah, there's so many industries that depend on the casino industry where you can also grow your career. Excellent point. Okay, well, I think we are out of time right now. So first, I would just like to say thank you to our panelists for those wonderful insights. And also to our speakers in the beginning and to all of the people that produced this wonderful event, including Sarah, the Assistant Director of Light, and the tech crew here that did such a wonderful job. So thank you, everyone. And thank you to our audience. We had such a great turnout and such, great attention to everything that we've been saying. So thank you to the audience, and I hope you all enjoyed the program. And I hope you'll stick around for some networking, and there's some refreshments outside in the hallway. So thank you, everyone.
This event is offered by the Lloyd D. Levinson Institute of Gaming, Hospitality, and Tourism, part of the School of Business at Stockton University, in partnership with the New Jersey Casino Control Commission and with the involvement of the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement.